I was beginning to spout content, and I thought, let's get things recording before. No, I keep finding myself pouting.
You could have just stop speaking in case it's worthy of recording.
Yeah, well,
that would be nice.
Oh, how dare you! So, yeah, I think it's because I've been doing a lot of practice, both piano and trumpet.
You've assumed the position.
Yeah,
the musician phase. I always find that
I find myself pouting a fair amount.
And
the other thing is, I keep finding myself walking around at work going, which you're used to me doing at home.
Yeah.
For those who don't know any brass players, it's a good way of keeping the blood circulation in your lip muscles when they're tired when you've been practicing.
I mean, at least there's no customers in the shop, would there be?
No, but it's probably not good for sort of COVID purposes.
No, well, shouldn't you have your mask on anyway?
What?
Shouldn't you have your mask on anyway?
No, they well, it's a bit kind of basically there's social distancing in place, and that there's only one driver allowed in the back door at a time. But in terms of actual practical kind of, you're disgusting.
Took you a while.
Yeah, everybody doesn't bother with me because I've got a hatchback.
What's a hatchback?
A really big boot.
Oh.
Anyway, where was I? Yeah, it's a bit kind of futile anyway, because every time a driver comes back into the shop, they sign in by touching a computer touchscreen in exactly the same place. So I think if any of us has it, then we're all going to have it. So, but and probably all the customers as well. I shouldn't say that, should I?
Well, don't put it in the edit then.
Edit? Well, what is that? Anyway.
Oh, that's very annoying noise.
I said I was going to use it to start the podcast every time.
I woke up a few hours ago.
It wasn't a few hours ago. It was... What time is it now? It's 7:45.
No, it was 3 hours ago, roughly.
Yeah, it was literally. Yeah, 3 hours ago. Yeah. And had chicken and bacon pesto pasta and garlic bread with cheese for breakfast, didn't you?
Yeah, I'm fine.
I resisted the temptation. That was very close. I almost said, "What was that?" Oh shit! I've gone and done it now. I've got a good feeling about this.
Yeah, if I'm more disjointed than usual, then that's my excuse.
There is no excuse for disjointedness.
I have a headache before we've even started drinking, so
all the more reason to get going. Are you going to introduce first, or shall we crack them open?
Well, I don't know. What
Decisions.
We should probably introduce first.
Go on then.
Ready to interrupt my introduction? Hello.
Get on with it.
Every fucking time.
So predictable.
Hello, Internet. I'm Fireball.
I'm the Orbiter. Dun, bum, bum, bum. Bum, bum, bum. Bum, bum, bum.
Are you okay?
Yes, Survivor.
Welcome to Breaking Bollocks episode 65. Yes.
Yeah. Survivor.
I know what I'm doing today. Oh, I see. Yeah, the episode Survival. I was very confused.
Survival.
I thought you were just pretty pumped up and energized.
I've done loads of research on Survivor the band now.
Oh, is that like globulism?
I even went out and got a stripy contact lens for my eye.
I don't understand that reference because I was born in a year starting with 2.
Eye of the Tiger.
I know that, but I don't know. Oh, I see. Yeah, but tigers don't actually have stripy eyes, I don't think.
No, but let's move on and gloss over that quickly and talk about something else, please.
Okay.
Beer.
Yes. Today, what have you got?
I've got Peroni to start with. I like to start with the weakest of the three for the evening. We usually drink maybe one
Meow.
during the. Well,
Don't know what that's insinuating, but I don't want to. I don't want to think about it. Actually.
you want to finish off with the one that bites back.
Bag.
Yeah. So yeah, here goes. Popping it open now. My little Italian friend.
I've got Asahi and the Japanese beer.
Oriental. I'm going Mediterranean, you're going... And if it comes everywhere, put your mouth over it. God, you're used.
What I usually do.
I knew there was some benefit to being double jointed.
I wasn't thinking that. Oh, never mind. This is gonna be an interesting episode because
I'm enjoying it already. I've got a good feeling about it.
you seem quite energized. So
I know.
I'm gonna hope that you take this in
Well,
a direction because I'm not.
it's not so much energized as relatively de-stressed. I'm getting my I wouldn't say I'm getting my head in order. I'm just recognizing that I've been mentally ill most of my life, and probably still am. So I'm just but I'm finding it a relief to acknowledge that self-acceptance. I'm doing meditation, lots of practice,
told it enough.
and just being not stressed about shit. Really, that's so. Yeah, it's just because of that, I am feeling energized in a positive kind of way. I don't know if I suppose, yeah. I don't know. I'm just consciously trying to be mindful and do things slowly, one thing at a time, and just not put too much on myself because that's what I've always done. So, yeah, I'm surviving.
Can't fix a problem if you don't know it's there.
No, that's true.
I was trying to be profound and wise, but you just seem to sort of go, yes.
No, but you know what I mean? Like when you find things quite difficult, I was going to say hard, but I know what you're like. When you find things quite difficult most of the time, it's kind of a relief when you kind of realise that that's not normal.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's not like everybody...
It shouldn't be, at least.
Yeah. So, I mean, by acknowledging that in the first place, you kind of have an opportunity to do something about it, which is fine.
Yeah.
Fine.
News. If we want to begin with that.
Have you seen that? You haven't seen the news today, will you? That
I don't really pay attention to the news. I just sort of get it from people on Twitter.
They're reassessing the grades.
Oh, right.
Nicola Sturgeon has apologised for the fuck up.
Oh, yeah, I got my exam results. 4 A's and a B. Would have been straight A's. Fucking physics.
Well, see what they've admitted that they got it wrong. Basically, Nicola Sturgeon said, "Yep, we fucked it." Basically, they've tried to. She's done her usual of, which I think is admirable, of admitting that it's a really difficult situation. We're just making it up as we go along. We're just doing our best. So bear with us, kind of thing. And she's said that the complaints that have been aimed at the downgrading. Quite rightly pointed out that it doesn't take into account individuals. It's basically it's a blanket kind of fix-all, which by its very nature does favour the schools in the more affluent areas because the criteria they're using for doing the downgrading isn't based on what the people who know the individual pupils best know about them. So basically, they're not going to necessarily go completely with. Although it has been suggested that the best way to do it would be just to go with the predicted grades from the teachers because they're the ones that know the individual pupils. So I suppose there's a kind of been a tendency in the past, like an adversarial relationship between teachers and the government, both in England and Scotland, hasn't there?
Yeah, I mean, most teachers that I've heard talking about this sort of are quietly resentful of the SQA normally, and think that it's doesn't make sense most of the time, but I think that's fairly typical because I think it's just sort of with the nature of exams themselves, like they're not necessarily fit for actually ascertaining what you know or how skilled you are. It's testing that you can remember information and recall it on the day.
I mean, as far as it affects you, the only thing that it will mean is if your predicted grade that your teacher supplied was higher, which the only one it could be would be the B. If your teacher predicted an A, because you don't actually know if that was downgraded or not, do you?
I don't know. I just got the flat sort of what each letter grade was for each thing. I didn't get like a breakdown of it or anything.
So you may get a regrade.
But I think
it's going to fuck up people's university applications, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I think they're sort of prepared to sort of negotiate a way forward with that. They've got like lines open for people to discuss if they're not quite sure what to do after that.
And of course, Boris Johnson's now reassuring, putting out the positive publicity and the nice calming pictures of himself, saying that there's nothing to worry about for the people that are waiting for exam results. Everything's going to be fine, and it's going to be
in the same way. There's nothing to worry about Brexit, which has already kind of happened, but we're looming close to.
But you know what? I couldn't wrap my head
basically
around.
No trade deal in the very near future.
Who's the health secretary at the moment?
Matt Cockin's hand.
Yeah, him. He came out the other day. Sorry, I didn't mean that to sound the way it did. He announced the other day that there is no evidence to suggest that COVID spreads in a school environment. It's like,
right.
Well, where the fuck would you get the evidence from when the schools have been closed since the beginning of the lockdown?
But this whole thing about, I mean,
it's just
there's this sort of debate about should kids go back to school, because obviously education's quite important, and it's not necessarily something that you can do fully online, especially for people that don't have as good internet access. But
it's typically ignorant, to hark back to a previous subject, for a politician to come out and say something that obvious, like, of course there's no evidence that it spreads in schools because the schools have been closed for the whole time.
Just like there's no evidence of Russian interference in Brexit because they didn't fucking look.
There's no evidence that there's...
I don't remember if we actually covered this, but they came out with that Russia report thing that they've been waiting to do for ages, that was scheduled to come out before the last election. And it turned out nobody's protecting British democracy. Nobody actually cares because it's blatantly obvious that Russian donors are controlling everything.
Yeah, but they own half of London, don't they? So,
well, yeah, but also recently as well, they're so obviously corrupt and shit.
Oh yeah,
in the public eye. They gave I think £150 million contract to one of their own donors who has no experience in PPE. Turns out it was all faulty. And
yeah.
What are they going to do with that? Because they pay their salaries.
I saw a comparison between the amount of money that it costs the government to support the migrants that come to this country every year, and compared that to that money that you're talking about that they basically threw away. Because they're saying that that there isn't the money to support all these migrants coming here, and it's like absolute bullshit, because it's about a fifth of what you just threw away on that one single contract, and that's not the only stupid thing that you've done.
Yeah,
I mean, what happened with that ferry company?
Oh yeah, Chris Grayling's own, I think, several £1 billion fuck up.
How about we get the migrants to come here and run the country instead of the government? Because they're clearly costing us a lot more
the
money.
thing. They're like talking about the cost of dealing with migrants in the Channel. First of all, they're asylum seekers and refugees from war-torn countries that we fucked up. And they're talking about splitting the cost between France and the UK, which also was something that was done under the EU.
Yeah.
And you're asking France to control our borders, which I don't think should be done in the first place. But if you're going to complain about it, like, you're asking to control your own borders and then asking France to deal with it. And that's what happened under the EU. It makes no sense.
Yeah. Oh, it's funny though. I mean, you've got to laugh because if you don't, you'd just die. Well, speaking of which,
They also did appoint a Russian billionaire to the House of Lords as well recently.
oh, did they?
Because they have to be so blatantly and openly corrupt and lie to everyone about everything. Which I mean, by the way, on the coronavirus in the UK, we have had one of the worst responses in Europe. Per capita, I think the only place worse than us is possibly Belgium, and I'm not entirely sure why that might be.
On that subject, just this week this last week, we have had an outbreak. Very close to us
in Aberdeen.
Aberdeen, which is just 25 miles away from us, is back in lockdown, essentially, isn't it? All the pubs and restaurants have shut. I don't know what the count is at the moment. Yesterday it was up to 101. Sorry. I'm just going to look it up, see what the count is now, because it's been going up by about 25, 30 a day. And I think there's 15 of the Aberdeen City football players have been heavily criticised because they all went out drinking on the night that it started. Well, 2 days ago, there were 60 new cases in Scotland. I think 39 of them were in our area. But we haven't had it's not on the BBC news site to say what the local count increase was. Oh, hang on. They don't tend to come out on a Sunday, do they?
I don't know.
I think we'll probably see on Monday or Tuesday. We'll probably see a big jump because that's when they put the weekend results together.
I don't tend to look at like the TV news because normally some Tory twats talking, and it just makes me fucking angry, and I just end up shouting at a wall.
But like, I mean, it's without going into too many specifics. A member of our family works for somebody who knows somebody else whose husband is being tested.
Yeah.
Now, this is what worries me about how you suddenly realise that actually this is how it could potentially spread really quickly again, because once it's out there, say for instance that person has tested positive, obviously the connections going through, we may get told to self-isolate, but I saw this person up close, the family member, the day after apparently the person had been told to go and get a test because she hadn't been told about it. So just as a hypothetical scenario, say I've had it passed on to me and I've gone to work. Now, we're not talking about the other 13 drivers and 5 people in the shop. We're talking about the hundreds of pizza boxes that I made up in the morning that have been distributed all around to hundreds of people in the area.
Now,
it's
hopefully, I mean, I don't know if they've gotten their test results back, but
I'm sure you'd have heard if there was anything to.
Yeah. It's
you know what I mean? That's how easily it could explode in growth, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all very well sort of shut in pubs and restaurants, and that's a good idea in the circumstances, but it only takes one
and then this is the thing
to exponentially start
talking about sending kids back to school whilst the mortality rate is low, but also talking about mortality rate when kids would die is still quite disturbing. schools aren't a closed system. The teachers could get infected. They might have underlying health conditions. The parents can get infected, and most kids would probably struggle if both of their parents had a serious respiratory disease.
How many people are there at the school you went to? 500 or 600?
I think 800, including staff.
Okay, so
roughly.
I know they're not all going to be in at the same time, but you have got 800 people there that go home to families.
Yeah.
So I know some of them share a family. So say you've got maybe 650, 700 people, 700 different families, maybe. Do you think?
I said including staff, so probably looking about 500 maybe. Because there are a lot of siblings because everyone here knows each other.
So 500 families of, what, an average of 4 people? Because if they've got siblings and 2 parents, then so that's 2,000 people potentially straight away.
Yeah, and that's just talking about the kids as well.
From one
staff
school.
could be going to other people, and the parents could be going out to work and infecting more people who will be going back to their kids.
Not that I'm saying that 2,000 people would become infected, or even...
It's just the risk is there, and that's a lot of risk to take, and that's just one school, and it's not a massive one.
Anyway, I don't know if there's much other actual news to cover, unless you want to kind of lace it through the episode.
Well, what I was saying about the UK response being fucking terrible is that they've done actually a surprisingly good job of PR around this, in that nobody's talking about the, I think, what is it, 60,000 deaths?
Yeah, well, it's all propaganda based, isn't it? I mean, it's all about the money. I mean, I don't know. Obviously, a lot of our sort of podcast network is into theme parks and stuff. Your sister sent me a link to an advert that Alton Towers have put out this week, basically saying that every person who comes to the park and buys a ticket can have a season pass for Alton Towers for that price. So there's only like a few selected days in the summer, and each person can have 4 season passes. So basically, Alton Towers is not paying people to go there, but if you go once, you can go as much as you want all season and take your whole family. That's how desperate they are to get people back in. And all of this, the Eat Out to Help Out thing, it's all good that it's being done in... I just don't think... I think the whole pub situation, it's a bit naive to think that it can work.
Yeah, well, it's just
because social distancing needs...
It feels like a lot of people just go, oh, we're fed up with this. We want to go back to the pub. And it's like, fucking grow up. Like, it's not the biggest deal in the world when you could literally fucking die. It's not worth dying for a pint. But when you can have it at
even
home.
even if you're a relatively sensible person, which there's a lot of people who aren't, but even if you are, once you get a few drinks inside you, you make poor decisions.
Yeah, if you're looking at deaths on reported statistics, we have the 3rd worst response in the world. Only places worst are San Marino, which is a microstate, so the situation's a bit different there, and it's entirely surrounded by Italy, which had a pretty bad outbreak, and they only had 42 deaths, and that's because they have a very small population, and that's the per capita thing. And also Belgium. Again, I don't know the political situation in Belgium particularly well.
It's difficult to know.
3rd worst in the world on deaths. And it is worth noting as well, our deaths are... It's 46,526 deaths, by the way.
That's the official confirmed cases, isn't it?
Yeah, if you go by... if you go by, like, care home statistics, that might be a higher figure, I'm not sure. But... It's worth noting as well, if we go back to total cases here, that our deaths are surprisingly higher than a lot of the places that have more cases than us. And I think that's because we've done a pretty bad job with the NHS on this, actually.
Well, the other thing is, there's been a lot of cases in care homes, isn't there? And
Yeah.
they are obviously a lot more vulnerable.
Well, I think we have a
That's why-
older population than a
That's
lot of
that's
these,
why Italy suffered, isn't it? Because they had
yeah.
a lot of old codgers. But I'm interested to see what direction it takes now, because obviously there are cases beginning to re-emerge and there are local lockdowns being enforced. What strikes me, I mean, it's the benefit of hindsight thing, isn't it? I mean, like in the case of like Florida, they could have probably got away with not closing down as soon as they did, because at the time
They closed down.
they did, yeah. All the theme parks closed, and
Yeah, but that's the corporations making that
The
own
state.
decision for their own PR. It's not the state itself that's decided
Right.
that they had to, though, is it?
there is, I think there's one or two parks that have been told to close because they weren't enforcing restrictions. But I don't think that's by the state. I think that's possibly by, I don't know what the the local authorities are divided into over there.
Right.
But anyway, what I'm saying is they're getting the big hit now, whereas New York had it back then. So the way it kind of travels, obviously we had the major lockdown here across the whole country when London was getting it really bad and Liverpool was getting it really bad because they'd had that big visit from the football team from Spain. So I think the idea of local lockdowns is a good idea, because it means that other places can do their best to keep their economies going in the meantime, as long as it's kept a close eye on. But it's like we spent about 3 or 4 months of being a blanket lockdown, or 2 or 3 months of being a blanket lockdown, when like places like around here could have probably got away with not doing it then, but we needed to do it now. Do you know what I mean? It's blowing up in Aberdeen now.
Well, it's sort of like if people had followed precautions better, then it wouldn't be necessary now for a stricter lockdown.
Where was it? I think it might be France that now have to wear masks in outdoor spaces.
Yeah, well, it's sort of it's that sort of thing of better safe than sorry, while it's less likely to infect someone else. But like one infection sort of spirals, as we said, with if you know someone who's met with someone who's met with someone else, then it very quickly spreads to possibly thousands of people, depending on how many people have been in contact with one another.
I know it's an important subject, but I feel like it's being talked about by us and by everyone, like until everyone's blue in the face. So should we try to steer? If there's anything else to talk about,
it's that sort of thing of, and we've had this with the protest as well, of people get bored talking about it, but that doesn't mean that the problem's just gone away.
No.
And I feel like a lot of people, I mean, I know, again, Twitter, it's the sort of thing where people are directed to what will make them the most angry because it makes them click on stuff.
Well, to try to sort of, I mean, not ignore it, but to try to kind of be a bit broader with the subject, if you like. Obviously, survival is a big connected subject with this. I mean, as a species, we're going to survive, I think.
Well, it's not that question of as a species. If we're worried about what will happen to us as a species, we probably need to look at climate change.
Greenhouse gases, yeah. It's relevant in terms of individual survival, like the survival chances. I'm not sure what the statistics are for what kind of chance you have of surviving if you go into hospital and then if you go into intensive care.
But if you look at any of these individual tragedies as, oh, well, on the whole, everything's okay. It's like, well, but those things could have been avoided, and every human life I consider to be more valuable than all the money in the world.
Yeah, so, I suppose you sort of think of it in terms of how many people there are on the planet. If you're talking about, say 1% of people are killed by it, seems like a small number. But
you wouldn't say, like, if someone did a mass shooting, I was like, well, that's a really small amount of the world population, so we don't have to worry about that. And it's like, well, no, because this is a fucking tragedy.
Yeah.
And if you're gonna, it's not really helpful to just look at every single person on Earth every time someone dies.
Speaking of news, Beirut.
Yeah.
Last thing I knew, they'd broken into the government. What was it? I can't remember. Some ministry or other.
I've seen various
Transport ministry, I think it was.
rumblings about the. Basically, if you haven't seen, weapons explosives warehouse exploded.
No, it was what it was. About 5 or 6 years ago, the port authorities confiscated the contents of a container ship that was coming from, I can't remember which country it was, but it was a country in Africa. I don't know why. I think it was maybe being illegally transported or something. But basically, since then, it's been sat in a warehouse. It's ammonium nitrate, which is used for fertilizer, to make fertilizer, but can also be used to make explosives.
Right.
And it has to be stored in a particular way for it to be safe. Now, it's just been left in this warehouse, and for years, people have been trying to get the port authorities and the government to do something about it because it's dangerous. And 2,750 tons of it.
Yeah, which is... Well, basically, it exploded, and the explosion, I think, damaged about half of Beirut.
Yeah, pretty much obliterated the port.
I think several hundred people died and several thousand were injured.
Yeah. I mean, if you've not seen the footage, and you're not too, you don't have nightmares too much, then it's quite. I mean, it's a mushroom cloud, you know. It's that big, but it's quite scary scenes.
But yeah, it's sort of. I think people in Lebanon themselves. I mean, I don't know much about Lebanese politics particularly. Are angry at the government for this, and there've been various rumblings of there might not have just been like an accident, that there might have been someone trying to explode it, but those claims I don't think have enough evidence behind them that I've seen to really...
No. Well, incompetence is bad enough.
Yeah.
But one thing I did notice was that there's a lot of the usual people coming out offering to give loads of money to Beirut for the recovery operation. And this is not something I realised before, but a lot of people come out to say that when something like this happens, wanting the good publicity, but then very often the money doesn't actually materialise. But anyway, the people that have been offering money have put like a condition on it that there has to be political reform.
Yeah.
So I don't know what...
That's sensible.
I don't know what was particularly bad about their system. But they've had protests, anti-government protests quite a bit, haven't they?
I've seen that before, and I actually thought it was an article about US protests.
Yeah.
Because they were talking about tear gassing protesters.
I think you were quite surprised, weren't you? Because you'd said that, you know, Lebanon's quite a peaceful, stable country, but
it's
different generations see it in a different...
I think it's...
way. I mean, it was a massive...
In comparison to much of the region, it's got I think a democratic government.
Yeah, but during
at least as democratic as somewhere like America. Or
during
Britain.
the 80s, though, it was like the focal point of a lot of the trouble in the Middle East, because they had a civil war going on.
But then you could, like I said, look at Ireland and go, oh, look at this powder keg.
We've got some cockwombles over the road, by the way. So if you hear any strange noises,
I think someone's gotten like a new car or something for their birthday, or
no, somebody's got a new motorbike, new toy.
Oh.
But I don't know if they're learning to ride it or whatever, but they're being fucking annoying with it. So apologies for that. But, anyway,
I mean, on the subject of our podcast, survival, because we would likely with it being quite a serious topic, go on to like poverty and coronavirus itself.
Yeah.
I would like to start maybe with something a little bit more lighthearted, like that whole sort of surviving on a desert island sort of thing.
Ah. Oh, that sounds
What did they do on that desert island disc? Is that the one where they ask you what music you'd take?
I think
I'll look it up.
I think there's a few things I think you choose a record you can take with you, and I think a book is one of them. I'm not sure what other items. It's various items that you can take, and you have to say why.
They need to choose 8 recordings, usually music, but they don't have to be a book, and a luxury item if they were cast away on a desert island.
Oh, fucking hell, are we going to do this now live?
I mean, sure, why not?
8 pieces of music. Yeah, and they can be any. I mean, literally, one of mine would be Gustav Mahler's Symphony Number 8. Sorry, I couldn't decide then because there's so many good ones. But it's over an hour and a half long, so that'll be one of my pieces.
Yeah, like I mean, I don't actually know because I'd not been alive at a time where vinyl was really anything but for like hipsters and stuff or antique collectors. How long would that be like an album or would it just be like a single?
Well, I did listen to it on vinyl back in my youth as a teenager. I used to go to Northampton Library, and you'd get like you could take out records. You'd get like, I think you paid 50p to borrow them for a fortnight. You had like a plastic record pouch thing that you took them. Anyway, it was a double album, but. Generally, I think the absolute maximum you can probably squeeze on, I can't remember. I know with a CD it's, I think, about 80 minutes, but it's less than that for a record. I think you'd be pushed to get more than half an hour out of a single side. So I think generally probably about an hour for an album would be. That's a very rough guess. It could be a bit more than that, but I do know that in that particular instance, it's not a traditional symphony in that it's not divided into sort of shorter movements completely. There are sections to it, but they kind of, like when you get a track that goes into another track. Right. An album. It's a bit like that in that the different sections aren't always divided. There's like an opening bit which is about 20 minutes long, which would be like the first side. And then the rest of it is just like it's almost like a continuous, because it's got singers in it as well. It's a continuous piece. I think
it might have been my percussion instructor at the music centres told us a story about I think they'd like missed the rehearsals for this sort of big symphonic piece, and then with percussionists, like, you're often not playing, as you may be aware.
I think I know what's coming.
And they'd sort of knew that they were going to play in, I think, the third movement.
If this is what I think it is, I've done this myself.
It might have been you that told me this then. But basically, there was they sort of thought that there was going to be a gap between each movement, but the first movement just went straight into the second movement. So right. When they were supposed to be playing in the third movement, the conductor was just looking at them like, yeah,
I've done it the other way around, where I've thought that I was at the next movement and it was the movement before, and I've started like playing really loudly at the beginning of the piece when the conductor put his baton down. Anyway. Yeah, in the studio, they would have had to, because, I mean, they didn't have digital editing the way we do now, so they basically had to plan a break point in the piece and do almost like a small revisions kind of edit thing, where they would come to the natural end of a phrase or whatever and get the orchestra to just play the first chord of the next bar as if it's like the last chord of a piece. And then on the next side, they'll maybe start from like 8 bars before that and then continue. Do you know what I mean? So almost like a natural breakup of it. But yeah, that was a limitation.
But like I guess sort of the spirit of it would be because it was started in, I think it says the 40s there.
Yeah.
On Radio 4, it would started in the 60s. So I think basically for most of its existence, vinyl would have been the intended sort of mode of recording. But I suppose...
Well, the idea as well being behind that you can have a mechanical gramophone player.
Right.
That you can wind up. You don't need electricity for it. That's why.
Ah, right. Yeah, that makes sense. Can you just get a Walkman or something?
What are you going to when your batteries run out?
Do Walkmans have batteries?
Well, how do you think they're powered?
I don't know.
Your phone has a battery, doesn't it?
Yeah, but it's got loads of other things to do. I just kind of thought that it sort of just played the stuff off the tape.
Well, it does, but it has to have an electric motor to spool the tape on.
Yeah, but you don't need that much power for that, do you? You could just get a bigger battery.
Okay.
Well, in my defense, most of what I know about a Walkman comes from Guardians of the Galaxy, and I assumed he didn't charge it all those years, but he has been in outer space, so probably did.
Yeah. Fantastic film. I like the look of the Guardians of the Galaxy ride, actually. Tower of Terror. I don't know whether they're going to change it at Disney World or not, but I know the one at Disneyland in California has been redesigned. They've basically turned it into Guardians of the Galaxy Tower of Terror. And apparently it's really good. It does look good. I saw it on the Imagineering story. I saw some clips of it and it looks awesome. Where are we going next? Right. It's not... Oh, sorry. Did you want to do the records thing?
What?
Did you want to do the Desert Island Discs thing?
I mean, if you want to. I just thought it would be a bit... Since the world's a bit blurry.
Always look on the bright side of life.
Yeah, it's something a bit more... I mean, I kind of assumed it was more of a sort of thing...
Bohemian Rhapsody, obviously.
That you would... Like, things that you take for survival purposes, but... Yeah, I guess sort of for mental survival, this would be.
Yeah, you don't want anything too depressing.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you don't want it to be superficial either. So Bohemian Rhapsody, Symphony of a Thousand has a journey in it, but it essentially ends up quite sort of triumphant and the whole universe is kind of involved. Did I say Bohemian Rhapsody? Yeah, always look on the bright side of life, definitely. Oh, it's a bit difficult. I think this is the sort of thing you should maybe pre-prepare for.
Yeah, I think they do normally.
I'll just put on the spot. A book. Now that'd be an interesting one. I'll go for the complete works of that guy. What's his name? Thingy Bob. He did The Picture of Dorian Gray.
Oscar Wilde.
Yeah, complete works of Oscar
It does
Wilde.
say here that you are automatically given the complete work of Shakespeare and either the Bible or some other religious or philosophical work.
Yeah, well, I'd go for Oscar Wilde then.
Right.
Because there's all sorts in there. There's poetry, there's novels, there's novellas, there's letters.
Does that count as a book, though? Because it's more of a compilation of several books.
It's over there on the bookshelf. It's one book.
I guess. See, with that,
All right then, Hitchhiker's Guide to the
like you're
Galaxy.
given the Bible or another appropriate religious or philosophical work, I'm not actually sure what my appropriate philosophical work would be.
Um,
Some sort of satanic tome.
also sprach Zarathustra.
Yeah.
Don't know.
No, that's my Nietzsche.
The Communist Manifesto.
Probably more like Das Kapital or something, but I've not actually read either. I think the Communist Manifesto was more of a sort of pamphlet. We had a whole discussion on this for our, was it 20 questions? Because I picked the Communist Manifesto and I'm like, that's
that
not a
blows your
book.
mind, though. I mean, like, because I'm assuming this has happened to some people, being stranded on a desert island.
Yeah.
And it's like you just can't imagine mentally what it must be like. I mean, obviously people, when they're thinking about survival, I suppose to a certain extent you just got to get on with building shelter and working out how to feed yourself and stuff like that. But once you get to the point where you are self-sufficient and you're not having to work out how you're going to do stuff, you're probably going to be fairly well adjusted to it by that point anyway, because you've been through the crisis point, haven't you? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I don't know.
I think a lot of them
sort of survival, physical survival was sort of already taken care of, and this was sort of what I was being asked for my mental survival, because they don't ask for like,
well,
what survival items would you take?
But the thing is, for me, I think the whole mental health thing is, I think all the mental, or the vast majority of the mental health problems that we see in the world are caused by the society that we inhabit. So I've got a feeling that past a certain point, being in the wild, if you like, I don't think it would be as mentally demanding as we assume it would be from within our Western bubble.
Right.
I think the demands would be more practical, physical, survival techniques and stuff like that. But I think the mental aspect of it, I think we have just as much, if not more, of a problem with how do we survive the modern world mentally.
There's something that I've brought up, a diagram of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Now, if you haven't heard of this, it's sort of, the basic idea is that all your needs sort of exist as a pyramid, where you can't have the top levels without having the sort of base to support them. Mm-hmm. So the base level, the bottom base level, is physiological needs, like food, water, that sort of stuff. Above that is safety.
Yeah.
Although that is a little bit vague. There it says just security and safety, as to what from necessarily is something else.
Yeah.
Above that is belongingness and love. So like having intimate relationships and friendship. Above that is esteem, so sort of feeling accomplished in yourself. And then at the top of that, and I find this actually quite interesting, because I'd imagine a lot of creative people don't have some of the things below it, is achieving your full potential, including creative activities.
Yeah, but you could then say that those people who don't have those things below are not actually achieving their full potential, because they don't have the support system in place to get that full potential. They're achieving something.
Yeah.
But I would say, looking at that pyramid, there have definitely been times in life when I, at a push, only had the bottom level there.
Right.
And even that wasn't particularly safe. I would say now, looking at it, I'm probably somewhere in the blue at the moment, still working on the esteem, prestige, and feeling of accomplishment. But I think I have the food, the water, the warmth, and the rest. Well, I could do with more rest sometimes, but I've got the safety.
I mean, I don't think this is as rigid as it appears, because I don't think
that's an interesting wording, though.
Yeah.
At the top there, it says self-actualization, achieving one's full potential, including creative activities. So, what would achieving one's full potential in a non-creative way entail? Career, sporting achievement. Do sports people see their skills as creative?
I'm not sure, really.
Because there's a lot of argument to say that it's a worthy source of entertainment.
I would say probably in terms of like physically, I guess dance would be the main thing that I would consider to be like a creative form of that sort of sport, but I don't think most
it's a bit
people
of a blurred area, isn't there?
think of dance first when they think of that, but then like something like gymnastics could be easily seen as more sort of extreme form of dance, I guess.
Yeah. What about, just taking a slight tangent, what about the current situation in terms of economic survival of, what I'm thinking specifically is, can we visualize
That's the thing with
a massive company going under?
Safety needs, it says security and safety. I think a lot of people have some of the things above without having financial security.
Yeah.
Especially in places where, like, something that I would consider to be like a physiological need, healthcare, it's dependent on that in like America.
Yeah.
It's sort of where the whole pyramid of needs here gets put round in a sort of wrong way round, if that makes sense. Where you can't have safety unless you have your physiological needs, but if you don't have safety in the first place, then you can't have your physiological needs.
No, I suppose. I mean, if you're talking about, I suppose that works better if you're talking about in the wild. In that your security and safety, you could have your food, water, warmth, and rest, but it's no good if you're not in a secure environment, because you could get eaten by a tiger or something.
Yeah, well, that's why that's above that, because like, if you're starving, getting eaten by a tiger probably not the top of your concerns.
No. But do you know, when I was thinking about survival, I was just saying about big companies. There's a lot of chatter about how big a company needs to be before it's immune to collapse. I mean, a lot of these industries, the tourism industry and hospitality industries, I mean, we've seen, and it was before the pandemic actually, we've seen Thomas Cook go under, and they were massive in the British tourism industry.
Think a lot of people have this idea of like too big to fail, which...
But can we actually imagine a world where, say, the Disney company went under?
Yeah.
How would that look? Because,
if Disney doesn't have customers, it doesn't have money.
What I'm trying to sort of think of is what that physically means and what the knock-on effects are. You know, I mean, because obviously there'd be vast areas of land that would be. I mean, I'm assuming that if that happened, then parts of their company would be sold off. basically to try and raise some of the money that, in what do they call it, in receivership, in administration. So while a company like I said, Thomas Cook went under. Now, that was a big British travel agent. They had, we went to a hotel in Turkey that was pretty much run exclusively for them, one of the Sun Connect hotels. And I was interested to find out what's happened to those now, because obviously without being fed with Thomas Cook's customers, then, that hotel, is it just going to stand empty, or is somebody going to buy it? And so I've got a feeling that there's always going to be somebody who's going to want to buy something to make use of it. But then, having said that, I've seen photos of the Butlins that I went to in Filey when I was a kid now, and it's just a derelict wasteland, and that was a thriving holiday camp.
Yeah.
And I know there was a theme park in
there is this
near Alton Towers called the American Adventure, which I really liked, but that's just wasteland now. It's just,
there is this sort of myth that I think a lot of people are taught about capitalism, is that it's somehow self-correcting, that just by nature, someone will buy up the things that people need and distribute them efficiently.
Because what's the alternative?
Well, it's like in America, there's far more vacant houses than there are homeless people.
Yeah.
The housing market and the housing crisis are one and the same there.
Yeah.
It's greed that's actually causing these problems here. And quite often, like in the case of Thomas Cook, that basically collapsed largely due to the executives being greedy and taking on big bonuses, which, I mean, I don't think they've actually really been that much harmed. I mean, sure,
it's all interconnected, though, isn't it? Because
are bad, but like they're fine.
Something big, like, while I remember, and I should maybe have put this at the beginning of the episode and again at the end, but you listeners can help us greatly and make Jeff Bezos pay us some money.
Not personally, but
well, kind of. Yeah, kind of. Well, anyway, basically what it is, our exclusive content, which is all our uncut episodes, and we do a monthly exclusive video as well, up until now has been only available via Patreon.
Right.
Hello, Simon and Craig, who are our existing Patreons. And you can still do that for $1 a month if you want to. Breaking Dad Official. But as of now, if you have an Amazon Prime account, you can now get all our exclusive content absolutely free to yourselves by going to the Breaking Dad Official channel on Twitch and linking your Amazon Prime account to your free Twitch account and then subscribing to our channel, because using your Amazon Prime subscription doesn't cost you any extra. You get a free subscription and we get paid, I think, $2.49 a month for a subscriber. Only trouble is it doesn't kind of renew every month. So
yeah.
But yeah, and if you're interested in seeing any of our other antics but don't want to have to pay for them and you have an Amazon Prime account, that's how to do it. Or if you really want to, you can just pay $4.99 a month to see it.
Yeah, well, I think with like Simon and Craig, like I don't know how much of the uncut stuff or the Patreon, that sort of Bob stuff, they particularly watch, but like
that's just support, isn't it?
Yeah, it's sort of.
Although having said that, I was putting together the edit for the uncut version of one of our series killers, the latest Sims episode earlier, and I thought this would be really entertaining, probably more entertaining to listen to than a lot of our actual podcast material.
Well, yeah, it sort of takes on, I think, sort of the atmosphere of sort of a live stream where it's just a bit more laid back and
Partly because there's something kind of leading the conversation, I suppose. I mean, we still talk bollocks, but
oh god.
Anyway, we tangented.
Yeah, I finished editing one of them recently, and there are some things in there that are just there,
Just left unsaid. Too late. Yeah, it was. Yeah, I don't know how well it would work on audio. You just need to get onto YouTube or
give
Twitch.
us money.
Yeah. No, well, you can do it free anyway. You can see the edited versions for free anyway. It's
yeah.
We don't.
We provide a service for free because we're whores. And wait, no, whores would charge you.
Yeah, we're amateur whores. We're trainee whores. I'm a trainee horse.
Whore interns.
I'm a trainee horse.
Nay. You know what? Something that I found I saw today that was quite
under the bed.
Appalling.
What?
I'm trying to remember where it was. I think it's in Ghana, possibly. They've started doing water wells with ATMs built into them, essentially.
Oh dear.
Where you basically pay for the clean water because it's not as easy to access in Ghana.
Yeah.
You do need the economic ability to have like a credit card or a mobile phone connection for that, though, I think. Yeah. It's just quite disgusting.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. That was my...
I mean, I know they commodify that sort of stuff anyway, but it's just quite a literal representation of that. Where the actual access to clean water is gatekept by...
That took a dive.
Basically a vending machine.
That took a depressing turn.
What?
The conversation it took a...
Yeah, well, it's survival. This is something that
Do you agree? Do you agree with the rule about self-defense? That do you think it's okay to kill somebody to survive?
It depends how much of a cockhead they are.
Have you seen? I think it was the name of the film. Actually, I think it was called Survival. I'm not sure. There used to be a BBC. I think it was BBC documentary series. Or it might have been ITV, I don't know, but it was one of these kind of David Attenborough kind of things.
I mean,
survival.
In principle, yes, but it's sort of often, especially when you get to people that have access to excessive force, like the police or the military, that it's sort of preemptively defending yourself, and that's that's not how that works.
No, it wasn't called Survival. It was called Alive. But the concept is the same. That basically it was a plane crash in the mountains, and they weren't found for like about a month or something. But people were some of them were alive after the plane had crashed, and I think basically they had to start eating the dead ones to stay alive. Obviously, because it was in the mountains, it was quite an effective freezer. So, you know, they didn't go off.
I mean, while that's a horrible situation, I mean, I don't think morally, although I might have some reservations about myself actually physically eating another human, I don't think there's morally anything wrong with cannibalism if they're like already dead. I don't think sort of that whole respect for the dead thing just means that they can't be like...
Jesus, can you imagine? I mean, you've seen the size of the turkey legs in Disney. Can you imagine? Just like, I just got myself a human leg here. Just like...
See, that's something I think that I have an advantage of, is if I was stranded on a desert island with other people, I would probably be the last one that they'd want to eat because there's no bloody meat on me.
Yeah. So how far would you go? What would you do to survive? There's some conundrums there, isn't there? There was Andrew Lloyd Webber wrote a Requiem in it was the 80s or the 90s, I'm not sure. It wasn't long after Phantom of the Opera was so successful. But basically, I've seen the documentary on the writing of it, and it was inspired by a newspaper article that he read. I can't remember where it was. It was some country, I think possibly in the Far East, in like a war-torn country. And the article that he'd read was basically, it was about a brother and sister who were being held captive somewhere. And I think it was the girl, I'm not sure, one of the children had been faced with a choice of either dying themselves or their sibling dying. So basically they had to choose between themselves or their brother or sister. And it was that inspired him to write this Requiem thing. But it's just like, you can't...
A powerful motivator for music, but it's fucking terrific.
But how far would you go? I mean, like, there's that classic kind of...
Oh, that's the sort of thing where, like, I don't think I could live with myself afterwards, but I don't know if my sisters could live with themselves knowing that I chose to die to save them.
I think every parent would like to think that they would sacrifice themselves to save their children's lives. But I think when you're honest about it, I don't think you know how you would react in that situation until it actually happened.
Yeah.
I certainly would like to think that that I would. But I mean, I suppose it's not as clear cut as that, is it? I mean, you would go as far as it took to save their life, and if that meant that you ended up losing yours, then. But it's not like you would be faced with a blank choice. It would be a case of, say, for instance, if you fell into a fast-moving river or something. Basically, I wouldn't be thinking, if I kill myself, they'll survive. It would be a case of jumping in to try to rescue you, risking your own life, but not knowing that you're definitely going to die.
But it's sort of in that...
You could both die in that situation.
Yeah, I mean, especially since I can't swim, I guess.
Got a bit dark there, didn't it?
Yeah, I was about to mention, like, Sophie's Choice there, which is about as dark as you can get.
What's that?
Have you not heard of Sophie's Choice?
No. Uh-oh.
They showed me... They showed this to a class in history, and... is it actually based on anything?
Who is Sophie?
No, it's based on a... basically, I mean, the actual choice...
Is it a film?
Yeah, we saw a scene from the film. The choice itself, it's basically set during the Holocaust.
Right.
And I think she's a Jewish woman whose kids are basically captured by the Nazis.
Yeah.
And she's asked to make a choice by a Nazi officer between either one of those kids of who she wants to keep.
Right. Nice.
And I think basically she refuses to make that choice, knowing that they'd be better off together.
Dead.
Rather than one of them surviving and having survived his guilt.
Yeah. Yeah. It's certainly worth a ponder. Yeah, because it's like... It's a difficult one, isn't it? because yeah. Ah, where did we? Can we take
I wanted to go on to the Dead Island Disc thing, but it
Yeah.
somehow
Well, let's-
made it to the fucking Holocaust.
Well, I mean, did anyone survive the gas chambers?
Yeah.
Like, actually go in and not die from the...
I don't know. There is
That's...
It is.
Have you seen Schindler's List?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah, that's nasty.
It's quite a. It is quite difficult to look at a lot, but I follow the Auschwitz Memorial on Twitter.
Mm.
They at least daily post a picture of someone born that day, years ago, obviously, who was in Auschwitz.
Oh, right, okay, yeah.
And says a little bit about them, whether they died, what age they were, what we know about them from the records that they have.
I just don't get it. I just do not get it.
The killing.
Yeah, well, it's the world. I don't understand.
Well, it's the sort of thing...
Does the human race deserve to survive? As a species, I mean, like, that's a blanket kind of question, because there's a vast difference between somebody like Hitler and somebody like me.
I would hope so. But, like, yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the time that sort of narrative and looking at the most horrible people...
But you've got to define a framework of morals to say, do you deserve to survive? Because if the Nazis had won and Hitler had survived, would he not be hailed as a historical hero by now?
Winston Churchill is. He ran concentration camps. Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not sure the concentration camps would still be open, but yeah, probably.
Yeah, it's fucked, isn't it? I mean,
the concentration camps Winston Churchill ran in Uganda were often had similar or worse conditions to that of Auschwitz.
But the more I think about, the more I experience the world, and the more I think about the atrocities that have happened and continue to happen, and the apparent futility of trying to do anything about it, the more I realise, I think that for me, and it comes down to the mental capacity to cope with everyday life in a world like that, is to just accept yourself and be yourself, and do what you can do to survive and to help those around you survive mentally and physically. I mean, my biggest, the main thing I can do is to play music, or to teach other people that. And I think a lot of people get by surviving by just doing their best in their own life. Because on a global scale, you can't really make an effect on people that are getting slaughtered in some remote country on the other side of the planet from here. But you can make a small difference to everyone around you, and there's this idea of ripples, isn't there?
I mean,
ripples of kindness.
Telling those people's stories when they don't have a voice in itself is something.
Yeah. Can you imagine what it would be like? I mean, I don't know that this is highly unlikely, but a lot of the world has access to the internet now, so it's not an impossibility that in some country that's suffering a lot from some of the stuff that we're talking about, they may have access to listening to podcasts.
Yeah.
And can you imagine
Potentially.
listening to us talking like this from our position of comfort? Where, you know, I mean, how dare we talk about survival from where we're sitting? It's like,
Yeah.
but can you imagine how it must feel? I don't think they would resent us for that, but it must feel like it must feel like they're listening to something from an alien planet.
Well,
It is a different world, isn't it?
but I mean, with for example, Syria, they do actually have, although they live in a dictatorship that's at war with its own country, essentially. They do have like healthcare there that's often better than the American healthcare system.
Yeah.
But I think sort of to know how something like the Holocaust happened, you'd need look no further than our country's response to migrants drowning in the Channel or in Mediterranean. There's actually someone, I think it was Lauren Southern. She's like this. I think she got banned from YouTube for being basically genocidal, which is a big thing to do. To get banned from YouTube, you have to be quite bad, given the sort of people that you can find on there. Yeah, she basically went on an expedition to kill migrants in the Mediterranean. She's from the UK. Katie Hopkins, who was actually relatively often consulted as some sort of commentator just because people found her being so horrific towards everyone quite funny. She suggested using gunboats in the Mediterranean to deal with migrants. And these are refugees, kids often, who've seen their parents being torn from them.
It's easy to allow yourself to get really angry and just think, put her up against the wall and shoot her.
Well, yeah.
But then that makes you just as bad, doesn't it?
Well, no, but it's
not just as bad, but do you know what I mean? Almost as bad.
It's that sort of thing where
get a mental help. It's more what
it's more just stop putting people like that on national television just because they get views.
That's the nature of sensationalism, isn't it? It's like, I mean, you know, we cry out against extremism because it ends up with things like 9/11 happening, but at the end of the day, we kind of gobble it up as a consumerist society because it gives you an adrenaline kick. You know, it's almost like, I suppose, a real life version of. I mean, people do watch like snuff films and stuff like that, don't they? And you think, why do people do that? And it's basically because they get a thrill out of.
What's a snuff film?
It's basically where somebody actually dies. You film somebody being killed or dying.
Right.
Not acting it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And you know, you see it on the news every day. It's like, I mean, you know, I said it tonight talking about that bomb that went off in Beirut. Not the bomb, sorry, the explosives that went off in Beirut. And it's like, you know, I've said I've advised people to go and watch the video because it's like this mushroom cloud explosion, and it does. It's almost like shock is a bit of a thrill to people. Do you know what I mean? But
yeah,
I mean, I wasn't thinking about the fact that when that bomb went off, I was watching thousands of people die.
Yeah.
You know, that's kind of. I think people like to be horrified. I don't know if like is the right word. There's a natural chemical response to it. And I suppose it's something that we're missing from a time when survival was actually a case of survival of the fittest, where, when something happened in the jungle or wherever we used to live, in caves or wherever, as a species, it was a survival adrenaline kick that kicked in. You know what I mean? You saw your mate being attacked by a tiger and his head being bitten off. It give you a fuck off mass boost of adrenaline so that you could run like fuck. Do you know what I mean? All of those natural survival instincts are still there, but they're not really being fed anymore. I suppose that's why people enjoy extreme rides and stuff like that, because it's that feeling of being in danger.
Yeah,
when you're never actually.
It's a complicated thing of chemicals in your brain that don't really make sense in the context that they're being elicited in, but like it's like naturally drugging yourself, essentially.
Yeah. But then,
in that case, when you're talking about real death, it's...
I wonder how far this outbreak's going to go in Aberdeen.
Well, I think they've acted quite quickly on it, which is...
Well, yeah, but then the school's open tomorrow.
Yeah, I don't know how they're going to do that. It just feels like people have just sort of stopped thinking with that. It just feels like they're just going and pretending like it doesn't even exist.
I suppose
for the purposes of this.
I suppose that's one thing the health secretary does have in his favour when he's saying that there's no evidence that COVID spreads through schools, is that they're going to get a fortnight to try that out in Scotland before the English schools go back. So,
yeah, it's but the sort of systems that they're imagining in place are pretending as if the virus basically doesn't exist, or it's not as infectious as it is, and also pretending that, imagining kids acting in a way that no child ever has.
What do you think is going to happen if there isn't a vaccine? If the vaccine isn't forthcoming next, because everyone's kind of expecting it to arrive next year sometime.
I mean,
I think our way of life is simply going to change.
I mean, it might have to.
Do you think it will, or do you think it'll get to the point where people just think, well,
but it
to
might...
keep society going, it's worth making the sacrifice?
Well, the sort of thing with our capitalist society is these companies operate in a way where what they're thinking about is their profits for that quarter.
Yeah.
Very rarely you get a company that thinks more long term than a year and actually plans for how they're going to survive the economy for like the next decade.
It's stupid, really, isn't it? It's really short-sighted.
Yeah, they're thinking of what can we do this 3-month window to keep our necks above water, essentially.
Yeah.
Which doesn't work when you require the economy to shut down for more than 3 months. They essentially haven't planned beyond. They haven't planned enough for that, and they've expected people who normally don't have enough money to save for regular circumstances.
I suppose what I'm trying to say is, like, most people, I think, have this underlying assumption that things are going to go back to normal, in inverted commas, whatever normal is. Okay, there'll hopefully be some of the positive stuff retained, like working from home where possible, and one would. I mean, I'm a bit cynical in that I just think if things could go back to how they were before, I think most people would just sink back into that. But what if it never does? What if we have to live in a world with coronavirus or COVID-19 specifically as a threat? I mean, we look back at the Spanish flu, and
it's largely only called that because the Spanish reported on it, because they weren't busy with World War One.
But that mutated, didn't it? That was basically what. See, I never understood that. They said that died out because it mutated, but it's like, well, surely. But what happened to the original strain? Because when a mutation happens, it doesn't unless it's a mutation which kills off the original strain, then the original strain is still going to be there. Although, did they not say that this COVID-19 has mutated twice already?
I think it's more of a mutation that it's mutated to spread to humans when it was already found in other animals.
I did know. I did read a news article that was saying that they've found a positive test case in a cat.
Right.
But they said that they had no sort of evidence one way or another as to whether or not that it wasn't dangerous to the cat. The cat didn't seem to be suffering at all, but they didn't know whether or not it could then spread back to humans from the cat.
Well, it's sort of the thing of it can survive on non-living things for some time. So if it spreads to a cat, even if it's not actually like the cat's the host of it, it could still spread from the cat.
So, as a species, how long have we been what one would consider human? Homo sapiens, is that?
It depends.
So when did we become
there's
sapient?
various sort of genuses of humans that could be considered the same species. Like there's Neanderthals and Homo sapiens are both human, but they're different genuses.
Was it not that? Wasn't it possible that they mated?
Yeah, they did. I mean, that's the definition of a species, that they can mate and produce fertile offspring.
Yeah, but was it not a Neanderthal and Homo sapiens mix? Because they were originally, were they not two separate species, Neanderthals and Homo sapiens?
I don't think so. What's it called?
Probably talking absolute bollocks. Homo something or other.
Human, I guess phylogenetics it would be.
I suppose what I'm trying to establish is we talk about survival.
I'm a fan of human evolution.
Actually, survival. I suppose the best example of survival is spiders, isn't it? Because anything else tends to evolve to survive.
Well, I mean, that sort of adaptation is really the survival. What sort of determines survival normally? Yeah,
normally, but I mean...
But like humans, the way that we've evolved means that we can sort of manipulate our environment to adapt to us, essentially.
Yeah.
Like we've got heating if it's too cold, or air conditioning if it's too hot. And
which could kill us if it's got coronavirus in it.
Well, yeah, if we don't adapt to coronavirus or other diseases, that means that we could die off. Plenty of animals die off to diseases.
It's one of those things where you've got to adapt pretty quickly. And I suppose that's one of the cases where you think, are we going to adapt to... And you mentioned it earlier, the biggest threat to us is global warming, isn't it? How effectively are we going to adapt to that? And are we doing it quick enough? Because... there's talk of these tipping points, isn't there, where the very chemical makeup of the atmosphere could spiral into something that's uninhabitable for us. And at that point, we will have basically, what would you call it? Too fast for us to adapt to.
What?
The tipping point thing with the global warming.
Yeah.
Could the environment, when the environment reaches a point where it spirals out of control faster than we can adapt, than we have the ability to adapt to it, that's where we basically
we don't have
die out, isn't it?
Well, like with flooding, it's predicted that I think about half of Vietnam is going to be underwater by about 2050.
Now, horrific as that is,
a lot of Egypt, especially like cultural, historic centres, are going to be underwater.
Obviously, tragic as that is, because billions of people are potentially going to die. As an entire species, I think the one thing that worries me the most is the chemical makeup of the atmosphere, the environment of the planet itself.
Well, that's the thing, that
whether
more
that's
people die of
breathable
than flooding, because people do move due to the flooding, but that doesn't mean that they're displaced, and that causes economic issues. But the pollution in the atmosphere, like you say, kills, I think it's got a death toll of about 1 billion humans over the last 100 years, where pollution's been a major thing.
Yeah. And cancer's got to be up there as well with, that's a major
Not as
killer.
much as pollution.
No. Well,
it's more of a
cancer
symptom potentially of pollution.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's many things in our environment which we've perhaps put there that are causing us to die of things like cancer and so then it becomes almost like a cyclical thing, in that it's not just, adaptability. You're talking about over the centuries, over the millennia, we've had to adapt to our natural environment, but now we're having to adapt to the changes that we've made in that environment. So it's almost like we're driving the environmental change, which we have to then adapt to. Can we keep up with the rate that we're changing our own environment?
Well, a simple way to do that, although we're kind of getting to a point where there is going to be irreversible damage, we just have to basically control it so it's manageable now, is to stop polluting so much. But we're sort of trapped in a ideological stalemate when people, basically, rich donors fund the parties that let them keep doing this, and then they stay in power, the donors stay in power, the politicians that help them stay in power.
I just have this image in my head at the moment of the whole human race basically being a metaphorical dog chasing its tail.
It's not the whole human race, though. It's a select few.
Yeah.
The people in South Vietnam that's houses are going to be flooded, they didn't do this for the most part.
No.
Most of Egypt hasn't really had much of a say in this.
Just what I could. And the other thing as well,
although New York is actually apparently going to be, I think, one of the places that would go underwater in this, and a lot of Wall Street would have probably had a play in that, ironically.
London, I don't know when it opened, but this was when I was much younger. Fuck, I forgot to start the other camera. When I was much younger, the flood defences for London started being put in place with the Thames flood barrier, which is a marvel of engineering and all that. But it's like, when you're getting to the point where you have to put things like that in place, and we know, that back in the 70s they were warning about all of these things going on with the environment, and did fuck all about it. They'd just rather build a big barrier than actually stop.
Well, it's like there's a version of the trolley problem Are you aware of the trolley problem?
Is that a problem that's like trolls?
No, basically it's this whole thing of
Go on, gloss over.
there's 5 people on a track that
Yeah, I do know the trolley problem. Yeah.
you can switch the rails to kill one person, but you have to actually pull the lever in order to do that. Huge moral conundrum. There's variations on it, but basically the version with capitalism is you can pull the lever to stop the trolley at any time, but if you do, the trolley company will lose money.
Yeah.
And an infinite line of people on the tracks.
I think we need to get the plumbing scene too. That's not the motorbikes over the road.
Yeah, there's something wrong with the taps.
I think there's...
I've had it before where like you just sort of move the cold tap slightly and it stops making that noise. But
there's air in the water pipes, I think. I think it's something to do with that. I don't know. I'm not a plumber. But I think you can bleed radiators or something.
What?
You bleed radiators or something. There's air bubbles in the something or other. I don't know. I've got no fucking idea.
To answer your question from earlier,
I was going to say something. I forgot what it was.
I guess, I mean, the sort of modern version of Homo sapiens was about 800,000 to 300,000 years ago, I think. Right. But there are other things that I guess could be classified as some subspecies of human.
The thing is, the human race is not going to survive in the long run. Because it's either going to evolve into something else or it's going to be wiped out, even if we're talking about in the heat death of the universe.
Right.
So we're all doomed.
Well, yeah, but like we'd like to.
Personally, we all die anyway. None of us. Well,
this
survive.
Is what I mean by talking about like coronavirus, looking at the human race as some big block and not looking at the individual tragedies there. It's not helpful to anyone to look at the big picture when you can't see anything in it, because if you look at the universe so widely, it's just black.
Well, actually, there was a good... we've been watching through, and I'll refer... Some of you will have known that me and Star Stuff have been watching through the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe in timeline order, including all the TV shows, and we're currently on season 2 of Daredevil. No, we've just finished season 2 of Daredevil, and in that there's a funeral for somebody who dies, and the reverend bloke there says something in his speech about this person that because there's only 3 people that turn up to the funeral, but anyway, basically saying that when someone dies, you got to remember that the world isn't losing one person when that happens, because with that one person goes all the experiences they've ever had, all the relationships that they've made, the network of all of the kind of everything that they've ever experienced. So basically their whole world dies. So the idea being that like when one person dies, a world dies.
Yeah.
You know, it's not just...
Well, if somebody dies, they could be the last person that remembered you.
Oh, fucking hell, stop it, man. Oh, man.
I mean, I knew this was going to get a bit dark with it being survival, but we've covered a lot of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, on that sort of, I know you weren't necessarily like saying this, but I think there's a lot of disinformation around evolution. I mean, there's the obvious things of like, what you're saying that I come from monkeys. It's like, well, you have a common ancestor with them, yes, but you're not.
I love visiting the monkey house at the zoo.
Yeah, it's quite.
There's something that happens when you're in the monkey house. If you take the time to actually go up and look a monkey directly in the eyes, something happens. There's some level of understanding going on there. You know, it's not like when you stare out a cow, you just get this blank expression back. With a monkey, though, it seems to be something. I suppose. I mean, that's psychological, isn't it? It's psychological, though, isn't it? It's just that it's because I know there's some kind of shared ancestry there, and I know there would be with a cow, but it's
similarity with your face.
Yeah,
People that you know, sort of. You can see a monkey's facial expression and sort of see something human in that. You can anthropomorphize them a lot easier than a cow.
I was just going to say, there's empathy.
Yeah. I guess why people are pets as well.
Yeah.
They tend to be some of the more intelligent animals, usually.
Mm. Yeah. So I was just thinking about how stupid some dogs can be. but then so can some humans, so
yeah. Oh. For further information, log on to Facebook.
Yeah. Have you got much else to say? I mean, I know we've only been going for an hour and 40 minutes, but we don't have to stretch it out unless there's anything specific to.
No, it's just sort of that that the survival thing.
I feel like we should,
on a human level.
I feel like we should bring some hope to the episode before. If we can bring ourselves to believe that there is any.
Yeah, I think so. But it's the survival with humans, where really base level commodities are sold, they're commodified in the first place, essentially.
Yeah.
And people are obsessed with the idea that it has to cost something because, well, you need it and therefore it's really valuable and you'd pay anything for it. But like, that's why it shouldn't be a product.
But then you get people volunteering.
Yeah, you get good people.
You get a lot of musicians playing for nothing or next to nothing.
Yeah.
Because I think because in those cases, people think that what they have to contribute is valuable enough in itself to justify its own existence rather than needing to have a price attached to it to give it any value.
It's sort of something that I would say is that, I mean, it's not necessarily that hopeful, but it's something worth keeping in mind, is that the billionaires need the working class more than the working class need them.
Yeah. And the other, yes, definitely. Sorry, that just hit me, the meaning of what you said, because, I'm trying to compare two performances that I give. One where I play music for people for nothing because I just want to give them that part of me. And another where I'm being paid a reasonable amount of money to play at their wedding. Now, actually,
for
me, the performance which has more value in that circumstance is the one that I didn't get paid for.
I mean, one example, the gig that I went to, where I might have had a few.
Oh, that one, yeah. Yeah, I didn't get paid for that.
Yeah, you got basically paid in.
That was a brilliant gig. I loved that gig.
You looked like you were having a brilliant time. I had a brilliant time because.
Yeah, no, that was. And in actual fact, that band Crossfire, I had been with them for a couple of years, a few years back, and then I left because I had so much other work going on, and there was loads of weddings going on and stuff, and I kept having to pull out of gigs, and I wasn't really enjoying it that much. But my priorities changed. I ended up going back to play with them, and now actually, even though I still do weddings and that, well, when they're back on eventually,
I mean, I
I
guess
still do paid work.
that sort of thing of like, although we're often taught to look at things through the lens of how valuable they are financially, really that's not any indication of value, given that
Crossfire, we do it for the fun.
Van Gogh, I think, was pretty poor throughout all his life, yet his works now inspire millions.
We were a bit gutted because we were going to do Kemney do a music festival, an outdoor music festival, and there's a large beer garden outside one of the pubs there, and we did it last year, and all the bands that do it don't get paid anything for it. Basically, it's just in a marquee in the corner, and one of the other sort of local people who's in the scene brings along the proper PA rig and mixing desk and everything. All the bands come along. They put on like a really good feed, and basically everybody just does it for free, and it's just loads of fun. We were going to do it.
We do this for free.
Yeah,
and we have a good time with
this
that.
Is worth fuck all.
Yeah, it's not worth that much financially because it doesn't have an audience, but I think it's worth. I mean, it's basically us sharing ourselves, I guess, in some way, and I think that's worth something.
Yeah, I think it's worth at least taking the time out to link your Amazon Prime to a Twitch account.
Yeah, it's worth £2.
It doesn't cost anything if you've got Amazon Prime.
No, it's worth £2 from Amazon.
Yeah, to us, yeah.
But
we've got I don't know, between 15 and 20 regular listeners on average.
We've put in hundreds of hours into this channel for less money than we've actually invested into it. But
oh yeah, much less. Yeah.
I mean, I don't think there's anything to replace that.
No, I mean, to be honest, when we started this channel, you and I didn't really spend much time doing anything together. I mean, we occasionally would, on very rare occasions, try and play a computer game, but never really. It wasn't until we started doing this that we actually had a reason and not an excuse, but a motivation to set the time aside to spend time together, was it?
Yeah, and
because it's so easy, even though you want to do,
you couldn't buy that.
No, it's so easy to let that time slip by when there are other things. But by solidifying that, by giving it a purpose, we've come together.
But it's worth looking back at that Maslow's hierarchy of needs, is that something like this, there were several times where it didn't seem likely that this channel would have survived a lot of the harder periods that we've been through, where we've had falling outs on things to do with the channel, but also wider things with our personal relationship.
Yeah.
And where the workload seemed too much because there's a financial need to actually use the time that we do this to also make money, particularly you, but also I need to study.
But that is also a shift that I've made myself, is the value of this time. It's not, whereas when we first started this, I possibly would have seen it more as taking time away from when I could have been working on something that I could earn some money from. Whereas now I'm more like, there's plenty of time when we're not doing this to earn enough money. This has value in itself. It doesn't need to be about, it's wasted time if I'm spending all my time trying to do stuff just for the financial gain. That to me is the wasted time, because that's time that's being spent doing something for purely financial reasons, whereas this is doing it because
It was a
of the other value.
strange ad I saw the other day. It was one of these sort of entrepreneurship programs that teaches you the skills to grow your business, that sort of thing. I stayed on it because it had a little bit of a different twist to it at the start, where the guy broke down the average earnings of an American, essentially,
Yeah.
into what they'd actually spend that on and how much they would have for saving. And that would be if they didn't have any emergencies and didn't spend anything on luxuries. They basically just didn't have a life beyond their job. And I think it came out to about $2,000 a year for savings. But in reality, you would need that for other things like medical emergencies.
Yeah.
If your car breaks down, that's several hundred already gone.
Yeah.
Where basically, if you want to save up that money, you're probably not going to end up with more than $100,000 in your lifetime. So breaking that down, it's sort of from someone that didn't really see the problem with. I mean, they said that they found it disturbing and that they wanted to help you, which they often do say that sort of thing. But they didn't sort of see the problem with the system there. That's why that's the problem. Not that the individual needs to change something there. The system needs to change, so not everyone needs to become some entrepreneur and be their own. Own their own stuff and skyrocket, because that's not sustainable.
Yeah.
And not everyone can do that. And that, by the way, that's the average. So like half of Americans are below that as well.
So basically, a lot of the human race are suffering when they could be living comfortably because of a few greedy people.
Comfortably, but not where their basic needs are at threat. These basic needs in the Maslow's hierarchy, not where their physiological needs are something that they have to pay for, and not where their safety needs are something either that they have to pay for or that they have to pay to get to a place where they could be safe.
Right. So, based on what you're saying there, basically, people should have access to food, water, warmth, rest, security, and safety without having to pay.
I mean, effectively, I know that's a fairly radical idea, surprisingly, but sort of you can't have a healthy, happy society because these psychological needs depend on these basic needs being met.
We're an adaptable species, though. I mean, I'm sure
but we're quite stubborn and afraid of change as well.
But if we could conceive of a system where those basic needs are provided and are met for everyone, I'm sure capitalism could find a way of profiting from all of the other stuff on top of that. I mean, imagine if pretty much the whole human race had enough food, water, warmth, rest, security, and safety. Imagine how much more potential profit there would be in those top bits of the pyramid from those people that currently are just not any use to capitalism because they're starving.
Well, they are used to capitalism because they can shake them down for all they're worth, or employ them so that they basically live.
Yeah, but it's
in effective slavery to that company because they can't leave that job.
But it's a fool's argument, because a starving beggar who needs to work for you as a slave is surely far less potentially profitable than somebody who's relatively comfortable and able to develop intimate relationships and friends and take part in the service industry and the leisure industry. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, but I think sort of this base idea of, and I guess that is that sort of short-term thing of you would need to invest in those people that don't have that in order for them to have that potential.
So a universal basic income,
Yeah.
basically.
But like it's that again, that short-term thing of.
But then you're
Well,
faced
then you
with
have to spend enough money to get back money.
See, I think one of the things people perhaps worry about is if you give everyone a universal basic income, are they going to spend it on their basic needs?
Yeah.
Because there are.
Well, the idea is
there'd be a transitional problem because you've got a lot of people that are addicted to drugs because of the situation of poverty that they're in, and you can't suddenly transition from that to then giving them money. You've got to support them through a change of circumstances.
Well, the idea is they, and also that sort of whole thing of, there's people that'll just spend it on drugs and alcohol. That's often not true. The rich people tend to spend a lot more on that.
Yeah, I know, but I know from experience that being addicted to something is difficult to.
Yeah,
and in some cases
can't
it can be life-threatening to.
That's a psychological problem.
Yeah.
That you can't
that's the help they would need to
help
get through
with unless you have the money to deal with the things that are causing you to have that psychological.
But
problem.
that comes under security and safety, doesn't it? But health is part of that, and that includes mental health.
Yeah, it's a complicated thing when you get into psychological needs because you could argue that's some of these things are physiological and safety needs. If you don't have intimate relationships and friends, you're potentially going to be
when you're at the
if your psyche's quite fucked, you're not necessarily safe from yourself.
Yeah,
there.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But the basic idea, and I think from what I've seen, it works. And by the way, this is also to eliminate the need of spending on welfare programs that have like conditions attached to them that often end up with a lot of money being spent on admin trying to enforce that.
Fucking useless admin that doesn't.
But it's basically
admin.
The idea is that you have those basic needs met without having to worry about job security or anything like that. You have that base level of the pyramid solved.
Mm.
And you have that foundation to work upon. Everyone gets that.
Yeah.
So you can take risks. You can spend time with your family without having to worry about
the best way would be if everybody was provided with accommodation and heating and warmth and food and water and a secure lifestyle as the base. Then if people want to earn more to get more, then that's up to them.
Yeah, but they don't have to see that
it's
sort
not
of thing.
It's not at the expense of people because everybody's basic needs are met.
But it's the sort of thing where and I mean, I think university should be free anyway. But
well, it was once upon a time. It was when I was your age.
Well, yeah, but sort of with uni, I mean, it's good that I can go there free as well. But
I say it wasn't free; the government paid for it.
Yeah, but I also get a loan to pay for some other things, but it's sort of like if I had that basic income, I wouldn't have to worry about getting a different job and distracting me from my studies. Like, someone could quit their job and go learn engineering and be far more accomplished and self-actualize, achieve their full potential.
Yeah. I'm feeling like we should be winding up soon, but something was popping through my head then. Yeah, it's probably not something to discuss on here because it's about when we're sorting out timetables for uni, which is kind of not very interesting.
I mean, I think with this podcast, and we normally do this where we go off on random tangents. We tend to talk about capitalism.
We kept talking more than last time, I mean.
What was last week's subject? Ignorance.
Ignorance, was it? I don't know.
You don't know.
We spent a lot of time on Google with me trying to keep this conversation going. I can't remember why, but...
Because you don't like to edit.
Oh, probably. No, I can't remember why we were Googling. Googling? I want to go and giggle at Google. Giggle. I mean, I want to giggity.
What are you talking about?
I want to go
Right.
and giggle at some TV.
Right.
Oh shit! When I shouldn't hold onto the table when I'm giggling because it makes the whole world wobble.
Right. Anyway,
I think
have we exhausted ourselves?
I think we've probably exhausted the audience too.
Capacity for interesting conversation.
I'll give you a clue though. For all this uncut content we'll be talking about, there's not a huge amount of difference between the uncut version of the podcast and the edit version of the podcast. Everything else there is.
I do actually edit things, so if you want to see...
But there's also... There is exclusive stuff as well. So
the Ico finale, there's a lot that got cut out. Will get cut out.
I need to talk to you about that because I was looking at the footage that we actually recorded, and you may well be able to put some of the re-recorded dialogue that you did under what we caught of the game footage, because all of the game footage was caught. It only cut out during the end credits.
I might have to do some shenanigans there because reasons.
It will work. I think it will work quite well if you match it. As I say, the game footage recorded unbroken right through to the end of the credits.
Right.
It was just that the dialogue cut off halfway through the credits. So you can probably insert yourself at a correct place at the rear end of that episode.
I mean, I'll play about with that. But yeah, that was annoying because the recording cut out because the MacBook was being weird and I didn't notice for like 6 minutes. So,
what can you do?
Yeah.
Let's finish the episode before it does it again, and let's go and watch some funny TV and maybe some music of some description.
Okay. Right.
Left.
Good.
Nah.
Anyway,
I've
been Fireball.
And I've been the Orbiter.
And this has been Breaking Bollocks, episode 65.
The Eye of the Tiger.
Survival. Bye.
Bish bash bosh.
What are you doing?
I've no idea. Making some afterbirth for the channel.
Afterbirth.
After pre thingy. What do you call the thing after the outro? Outro. Making some outro.
Just bollocks.
Detritus.
Extra
Waste.
bollocks.
Excess
bollocks.
Not sabotage.
Third testicle.
What is it? What is like the mess that something leaves behind after it's like a party? Is
ejaculate?
No. Yeah, we're just doing the ejaculate.
I hope not.
What do you call it? The aftermath.
Yes.
Thank you.
Done.
That was the word.
Why are you saying thank you to me?
Because you put up with me.
Oh, but it's nice to get the gratitude.
Oh no! I
Finally.
finished my beer.
Well, I can finish mine while you're packing up.
Indeed. Let's do this thing. Say goodbye to the people, Firebolt.
Goodbye to the people, Fireball.
This podcast is part of the After Dark Podcast Network.